Hey folks, welcome to the part two of interview preparation video. And if you haven't seen the part one, then I'll definitely recommend you to watch the past part one so that you have context on what we are going to talk about in this video. The link would be in the description. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So the next part is topics and rounds. This is going to be a bit long because this is a fairly large topic and we will talk about a lot of things here. So, the first thing would be that there is no one size fit all solution. I mean, I or anyone can or anyone else cannot give you a set of particular topics that will guarantee success. I mean, I can't tell you that you study async programming or you say just study event loop closures and you are good to go. You can now crack any interview. uh, the It doesn't work like that. I mean, as you progress, as you give more interviews, and then you will get to know a lot of more problem statements, a lot more mindset, and a lot of different type of interviewers and their questions. So it's a ever learning process, ever growing process. Yes, still there are some core fundamentals and common topics that are often tasked, and we'll talk about those. Now, the next is different levels, different round, different questions. Now, usually in most of the companies, there are multiple rounds, let's say 4 or 5 rounds, and each round tries to test you on different topics and concepts. These rounds can range from resume discussions, hands on coding, problem solving, system design, and at times data structure and algorithm rounds also. So, now let's talk about co- uh, the topic which we talked in the earlier thing, that core fundamentals and common topics. So the process I'm going to share, there might be deviation in companies, but this is like you I'm talking about common uh, theme of the interview I'm sharing here. Usually it starts with that a lot of companies have a telephonic round where they'll call you up, and the interviewer will try to judge you or make an opinion on your past work, a very high level uh, discussion. In this round there would be no deep dive into things. It would be more like trying to gauge what type of past experience you have. Maybe do you know certain fundamental skills or fundamental topics, and your opinion about those things. And once they have clarity, once they see that yes, you are confident, you know about things, then they'll pass on you to the next further rounds. After the telephonic, where introduction and those things, and having knowledge about your past work and all, the next round would be, you can say, more of a resume discussion. It's like we can call it tech deep dive type, where you can have resume discussions and you can have some programming questions. Now, in the resume discussion part, like I mentioned earlier, that you should not lie, because in this round, interviewer can ask you to share some interesting problem statements you have solved in the past, and what were what was the impact, what were the changes you were able to make, and what was the output of those changes. So if you have listed something where you are not too sure about things, then you might lack, and you might fall short in this particular round. Now, once you share, let's say you talk about I implemented certain dashboard in my last job. Now, interviewer can ask or can introduce more problem statement, more use cases to your existing problem statement. You say I did a dashboard, then uh, interviewer can ask that how can you optimize that dashboard. Let's say that you have a backend API contract which is giving you this data, then how will you optimize it on client side, and these things. They'll try to introduce more use cases to your existing or your past work, and they'll expect you to come up with solutions, some sort of solutions on the go. So uh, mostly this round revolves around resume discussion, but often people can talk about programming questions here also. I mean, They can give you code snippets. They might not directly ask you what is closure, what is event loop, or what is promises, how the promises flow work and all that, but they might provide you uh, a code snippet where you have to share your findings. Maybe you have to guess the output or something, or uh, so that code snippet will test you on multiple things. It might test you on closure, it might test you on prototype chain, it might test you on arrow functions or scoping. And based on your what you mention, the interview can take any direction. Maybe you talk about prototype there, then the interviewer can ask you how the prototype chain work, how the new keyword works, can I use arrow function at prototypes, and so on. Now, once this round is done, the next round is mostly machine coding or hands-on coding, where the interviewer can ask you to implement something, maybe some UI component, and they might have multiple variants to it. Let's say they ask you to implement a modal. Now, maybe you are done with the basic modal. Now they can ask you that I want different type of modals. I can open this modal anywhere in my web app at any level deep. Then how will you manage that? How will you store the data? So this can take any direction. The problem statement could be anything. They can ask you to implement file system, or maybe some UI, some design system component, breadcrumbs, anything. A lot of things. Maybe some you can they can give you a problem statement that we are building some, let's say, Google Docs like app. Now you have to save data, auto save data. Then they can extend on that problem statement. So this is more this the round here is mostly about, can you come up with solution, how you write code, how you structure your code, how you name variables, how modular your code is, how well you are able to explain your thought process with the interviewer. It is very possible that you're not able to come up with the working solution, or you might come up with a bare bone working solution, but if you are able to share your thought process, you know what you are doing, then you can be taken to next step or next interview process. Now the next round, a lot of companies do ask DSA questions. I mean, it's a mixed bag. They call it a problem solving round, where in front end there is no major DSA involved, at least what I have seen, but there are companies who might deep dive into red black trees or graphs or something. I personally don't not a very fan of these questions in front end interviews, but some many times companies do deep go into questions in for arrays or searching or sorting, maybe some front end problem statement which revolves around sorting or binary search or arrays. And personally, as an engineer, you should be aware of data structural algorithm in some way, because it's not about that you memorize a certain algorithm. It's more about the thinking part, that the guiding principles, that you have a certain solution and you can optimize and come up with a more optimized version of the solution that applies anywhere, be it front end, be it back end. But so these DSA questions evolve your thinking, so it never harms if you solve problem solving questions. But in an interview, still I don't prefer that any company or anyone going in deep dive into very hardcore graphs questions or of that sort. In hands-on coding, people might also, I've seen people asking for senior roles, polyfills, very hardcore, like promise polyfills and those things. And it's completely a mixed bag. Some people ask tricky questions, set timer, promises, what is called for, what is called after, and all these things. Now, after this, there could be, a system design round. Now, system design round, the thing here is that system design round are often, uh, not about a working solution. It's often about thinking how you approach the problem. Let's say in a system design round, you are given a problem statement that you have to build an app like Slack. You have to how to you have to implement the maybe Redux store or something of a app like Slack. If I share that problem statement with you, and on the very first go, you just start typing some JSON that this is the data, this is the channel, this is this. I'll normalize this and that, but that's not the way to go. In Usually, it's all about how you approach the problem. If I've given you a problem statement, or if someone has given me a problem statement, so uh, their first expectation would be how you think about that problem statement. Are you asking any questions? Maybe there are some constraints on the problem statement. What type of approach you are taking? Are you taking a bottom up approach or a top to bottom approach? What is your thought process here? What type of questions you're asking? And if I've given you a statement like build a Slack, then Slack is a very vast app. There can be channels, there can be direct messages, group messages, there can be audio video calls, there can be notifications, syncing, whatnot. So the thing here is that you mention to the interviewer, you ask them, are there any constraints? Then you mention these features can be there. Maybe in the first iteration we can build on these things. Then you create a subset, because now for you the problem statement simplified, because you are sharing your thought process with them. It's always often better to think aloud, think out loud, and write things down, uh, and share your thought process with them. Then you have created a subset of the features that maybe in the first iteration I am going to talk about channels and direct messages. Then you can move on to the part that this would be the redux store. I'll normalize in this way so that maybe data lookup is more than I'll use these data structures, I'll use this and that. So it's always about how you are thinking, and what type of solution you can come up, because it's more of a conversation. No interviewer, I don't think interviewers in these round would be like, you go speak, 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 I'll just listen. They take active part. If you're stuck, they'll give you hints. They'll it's more of a pair programming, but not programming, but like a two-way conversation, full duplex thing. Also, in this case, I'll also like to mention one thing, that you can divide the questions and topics in like major categories. Let's say there are two type of firms majorly I'm talking about here, that there could be a B2B firm or there could be a B2C firm. B2B is business to business companies which deals with businesses and build tools for them. A B2C company would be company who's work building for the actual end user or retail users like Flipkart, Oyo, and some things. Now the question and interviews in these different type of companies can vary a lot. Let's say a B2C company where Flipkart, Olex, Oyo, they their web applications support multiple devices. Someone can access Flipkart through desktop or through mobile or through tablet, variety of different browsers. You don't know which browser they are using. So there could be questions around cross browser functionality. a, a, a B2C company can grill you on CSS also, because they across devices you need to know, you need to write performance CSS, and you need to be aware of different models, box model, flex box, maybe grids and all. I mean, I'm not saying these are the topics which they are going to exactly ask. I'm saying that the gist of it is that questions might differ between a B2B company and a B2C company also. You have to, when you do preparation, then you need to know for which firm you're applying for, and what type of domain they work in, what type of problem they might face, and they might ask you. Let's say if you are going for an interview for a let's say I worked in one company previously which used to serve ads on the web. So now their whole model used to work in the browser, so cross browser functionalities, and how DOM works, DOM traversal, how you can work with CSS, how can you work on DOM elements. These things matter. Performant code matters because they are serving a JS bundle to some other third party client, and they have to run that code on their website. So how to optimize the JS bundle, these things matter in that regard. Maybe in a B2B company, the the development is more feature driven. They have to support a limited set, because the users are business users. They have to support a certain device size only. So their question might revolve around those things. their topics. They might judge you on core front end concepts. So this, you have to, like I mentioned earlier, that you have to refine and personalize your CV. Here also you have to refine and personalize your preparation also. And as you move along and give a lot of different interviews and see a lot of different problem statement, you will develop a good understanding of what type of questions you have to prepare and so on. Now, the next part in this would be intersection of skills. So one thing here would be that this is like, I'll say, a small hack. I'll say that once you have shortlisted a certain companies, then check out, and let's say you want to work in front end. So take out their JDs, see what all skills they are demanding, and find the intersection of these skills. This is more like on the lines when people often ask me that what skill I should have. Should I work in React or Angular or Vue or so and so on. I mean, if you purely talking about job market, then the best thing is to analyze the job market. Just find the intersection of skills between different JDs and the skill which you see most common. I think that would be the obvious choice to start with, because that will make you market ready. And as you go along and develop the strong forte and strong hold on that skill, then you can obviously move to different things. You can build uh, complementary skills to that. If you have a React, you can maybe you look into Svelte or anything else. About, now you have developed understanding of front end, then you can have a look at maybe React Native, or maybe you can look into design, how design, what's their thought process, so that help you when you talk to folks in the company. So try to tailor made or tailor your learning plan as per that. Now, the next part would be give better examples. When you are in an interview, do not just give a, textbook examples. If I ask you what is closure, or if anyone asks me closure and I come up with, and I say that a closure, any function which remembers its parents variables is called closure, or anything of that sort. Or I'll talk about promises or anything. If you give a very textbook MDN definition, then that is not, that is correct technically, but you can do better. I mean, you can maybe, if you talk about closures, then you can give some real world example where you used it. Maybe write a code snippet that I created this, and in by doing so, I was using this variable. Even after the garbage collection, this variable will stay in the memory because the inner function is using that variable, and that's why and this whole concept is called closure. And if you try to link it with the uh, with past examples or share those things, then interviewer will have more confidence that yes, you have done things and you know about things. This is like, if I let's say you have never seen an apple, and if I tell you that apple is red, apple is of this shape, and apple is of that, then the best thing you can do is you can visualize best to your capabilities. But if I show you an actual apple and you can hold that thing in your hand, then that makes a lot of difference. The same thing applies here, that if I just tell you a textbook definition of closure, then it's up to the interviewer how they are perceiving your answer. But if you give them actual real world examples of things you have implemented and where you use that particular concept, then that will give them more clarity. So we talked about different topics, different rounds, how you can find intersection of skills, how can you give better examples. Now I would like to talk about some journal pointers. See, in first in the we talked about the tech rounds, coding and system design and all that. Usually after those rounds, there is also one more round, which is hiring manager round. In this particular round, the aim is to judge you on culture, that are how well you can fit into the team. If there are conflicts in the team, or then how are you going to react to that. uh, are you going to say things out of thin air, or are you going to back up your opinion with some data? Because you need to remember that at the end of day, your opinion is your opinion. It's not a fact. So, I mean, if you say something, then back up with data. How will you resolve conflicts? How will you work with different stakeholders in the team, with product, backend folks, design folks, marketing, and so on? And uh, they will try to judge you on in your past experience, how you have performed. Can you can you maybe, let's say, companies often do that, that let's say the company has a certain core value, transparency, then was there any instance in the past in your experience where you were able to showcase that quality, transparency, or maybe challenging the status quo and all these things? And this is often also called as a bar raiser round, which is often with a senior leader in the company, or maybe the person you're going to report to, and they'll judge you on those things. Also, in an interview, often try to, or at least try to steer the conversation in the direction which you are more comfortable. Try to control the narrative. If you're talking about certain, maybe you're talking about prototypes, or you just mention prototype, the jargon somewhere, event loop or lexical environment or something, you mention a certain keyword, and but you're not very comfortable with it, but just for you thought that if I mention it, then I'll sound smart, and then you're not able to back that up. You're not, if the interviewer asks you questions about that, then you should remember that you opened that Pandora's box. Now if interview go haywire, then it's up to you. So try to see how, try to read your interviewer, that how they are perceiving your problems, and have a, as I mentioned earlier, it's always good to have clarity on things you're comfortable with, and try to steer the conversation in that way, so that you are more likely to to succeed, and more likely to move to next round. So the next thing is resources. These are some very good resources which I follow and which I know. I mean, there are a lot of good people like Kenzie Dodge, Dan, Westboss, Tanya, which I follow their blogs and their courses, which are good. I mean, JavaScript Info is a good resource. You have our resources, code.devtools.tech, or our YouTube channel, and MDN, often the most go-to resource is MDN. Then you have courses on Frontend Masters, Egghead, Udemy. You can do that courses. There are a lot of YouTube channels out there. Obviously, the best one is this channel, which you are currently watching. And apart from that, we have a different channel, Frontend channel, Lakshya Saini. He makes a lot of good content. You have a lot of GitHub repos which provide you, where a lot of opportunities to open source, to contribute to open source, or to they have interview questions, and so on. So these are some very, these are some resources which I mentioned. I mean, if you have any resources, or if you are someone who creates content, or if you are someone who writes blog, or publish, or have has a newsletter or anything, then do mention in the comments, do share with us, so that we get exposed to more quality content, and I can bookmark those resources. So please do share. So this brings end to our video. So we talked about everything from resume to search process, jobs, levels, rounds, what type of sources you have to look for, and how to you know steer and control the narrative of your interview process. So this whole video was based on my experience, and as I mentioned earlier also, that please take it with a grain of salt. Not everything might apply to you, and I mean, I'm also learning on the job. So if you feel that I missed out somewhere, or I am wrong, or you would like to share more insights on some process, or I missed out on something, then please do share in the comments. Do uh, let us know your opinion, and please do like, share, subscribe, which everyone says, so that we are motivated to create these more videos like these, and more people are aware about our content. So Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.